Welcome back to another recording of Elevate Your Brand. I'm Chris Anderson, your host. Excited to have this discussion with our guest today. Going to help you navigate your mornings a little bit better and increasing what you can do with your life through the transformation of your morning routine. We have author of Rise and Shine, How to Transform Your Life Morning by Morning, Toby Oliver on today. Toby, welcome to Elevate Your Brand.
Thank you, Chris. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking a little before we hit record and everything. So Toby's over in the UK, um, and a lot's different between the UK and the US. I think possibly within just culture. There's so much more there's history in the US, but a lot of history in the UK. We were talking about. I really enjoy history and um, just seeing how things are different. So this is good. We've had this topic before a little bit, but coming from a perspective from someone in the UK, I think it'll be interesting to see if there's any differences, which I'm sure there is because everyone's unique. And um, yeah, so Toby, with that, I guess long way around to say, like, how did you get into wanting to teach people about morning routines and writing this book?
That's a good question. So I guess I discovered it sort of the hard way.
Mm.
As a kid, I loved mornings and I would wake up full of enthusiasm and I couldn't understand why no one else shared my enthusiasm. And when I was really young, my sister and I, who co-wrote the book with me, shared bunk beds. We had a bedroom with, two beds stacked one on top of the other. And she was in the top bunk, being the elder. And I would wake up and I would go, "Are you awake? Are you awake? Kate, are you awake?" And then I would start to kick
Oh.
the underneath of the bunk above me until she very, very grumpily told me to stop and that she wasn't awake, she was asleep. And that was how our morning started. And then we would squabble and fight and argue, set ourselves up perfectly for a really, really successful day of fighting and
Yeah.
squabbling. Um, and many, many years later, running my own business at the same time as having a full-time job and dealing with some other issues in my personal life, I discovered that mornings had really lost their shine for me. And I
Mm.
really struggled, and I would be rudely awoken by the alarm and find the start of my day swearing, shouting at the alarm,
Yeah.
and forcing myself out of bed, and then sort of jumping in the shower, putting on my business suit, and then, if I was lucky, grabbing some toast as I ran out the door.
Mm.
Um, and I realized that this was not sustainable. Something was wrong. And one morning I was waiting in the kitchen for the kettle to boil. And I just thought, I can't take any more of this. I really had enough. Um, and something inside me, a voice inside of me said, try doing some yoga. And I'd been
Mm.
going to a weekly yoga class, and I think it was the one thing that had stopped me from completely imploding. A friend had persuaded me to go, and it was like my little haven of peace in this
Right.
chaotic week where I was just doing a full day of work, senior executive for a company, and then coming home and trying to run my business around it, which I look back now and think it was crazy, but these are the
Right.
things we do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I did some yoga. I did about 10 minutes of yoga, and I thought, oh, I feel different. I feel different going into my day now. And so the next morning I thought, oh, I'll do that again. And gradually I found that, and this was in the kitchen in my pajamas, while, it was dark outside, everyone else asleep. Even the dog hadn't got up yet. Um, and so I found that I was starting to look forward to mornings again because it was like a something positive, something for me. And I
Mm.
noticed that the benefits were accruing through the day. And it was almost like I was putting this helpful sort of shield of sort of calm and taking that into my day. And then gradually I started to add other practices into my mornings and really, really recognize how taking charge of my mornings could influence my whole day, not just how I
Mm.
felt, but in terms of my productivity and my success levels. And when I started to dig into the research, I noticed that there was a lot of evidence behind the practices that we outline in the book. And I discovered for myself and created a morning routine that really helped me, leave my job, focus on my business, and then also retrain as a therapist. And in working with people, I started to discover how these morning practices could really, really help them.
Yeah.
And this is a long answer to a short question.
No, it's good.
But my sister, really interestingly, had gone on her own journey and discovered
Mm.
also how morning she'd really struggled with her mental health. She's a top business coach, leadership coach, change specialist, worked with sort of most of the FTSE 100 and Fortune 500, really, really big, educated at Oxford, really top of
Wow.
her career, but was sort of struggling. And she's very honest, talks about this and said, I felt like, I was going in, helping all these people, but yet my life was really, really not doing so well. And for her, it was starting to take charge of her mornings. Now, we didn't realize this about one another until we ended up on coincidentally, serendipitously, on a course for a weekend together. And we started talking and we found out that we both shared this passion personally and professionally for how mornings could really change your life. And then said, oh, how about, we write a book to try and share these really helpful practices with more people so that others wider than the people we're able to work with one-to-one or in, through businesses can really benefit. And that's how we came to discover the power, the transformative power of mornings.
That's awesome. I always like hearing people's stories and how they explain it, and you get where the emotions come in and they get excited. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's so true. Like, mornings do play a big part. And when you hear morning routine, a lot of people, especially like entrepreneurs, they hear that, oh, get up, 4 or 5 a.m. is a must. And it's like some people don't fit that, which is okay. And I think that's something to I mean, and correct me, this is kind of your expertise level, but like, it doesn't have to be the ones getting up at 4 a.m. There are successful people that get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and later. It's what you do at the time after, right? That you
Yes.
actually get up.
Yeah. That your morning starts whenever you get up. And we have different rhythms. Most people have heard of the circadian rhythm, which is our natural sort of sleep wake cycle. And so some of us, night owls and early birds is the example that most people know, but there are other categories. But we also have rhythms throughout the day, the ultradian rhythm that affects our productivity and focus. But mornings are sort of this liminal zone where we have a chance to really take the reins of our day and of our life before the sort of the conscious mind that sort of kicks in, and we just race ahead. And far too many of us go from horizontal to vertical in front of a device without thinking, without setting any sort of intention. It just happens. And so we were really clear in the book that we wanted to make this approach suitable for everyone. And we wanted to make sure it was easy, effective, and accessible. And we didn't want it to rely on people having lots of time or having lots of money, because I'm aware that there are other approaches that some people find helpful. So I'm not criticizing anyone else's. It's about getting up at a certain time, doing like an hour of exercise, doing this, doing that. That is great if you have got the time. I think a lot of the people who can do it not only have the time, that maybe they have the financial resource. So maybe they have, someone looking after their kids, someone looking after their food, someone, driving them somewhere.
Right.
So, they don't necessarily have the same pressures that the average person has, that doesn't necessarily have the luxury of an hour and a half in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
So we wanted to have practice that you could do, little as 15 minutes, or even less. And whenever your day starts for you. So there's no strictures about you have to get up at this time, because it's not realistic for some people. I'm naturally a morning person. I like getting up in the morning. My sister is far more of a night owl, but as like many people, you train yourself so she is able to get up in the mornings. But she had to then really be convinced of the benefits of getting up maybe slightly earlier, even if that's 15 minutes. And so for her, and maybe sometimes it's longer than that, but actually that doesn't come naturally to her, the mornings. Or she says it changed for her having children. That's when
Mhm.
suddenly she discovered you didn't have a choice. The kids
Yeah.
are up. You had to be up. And so, you know, when her son was born, she said she found eventually mornings easier, you know.
Mhm.
She was
Yeah, see, that's
trained.
why I found that same thing. So,
Mm,
right now, my son's 1 or just a little bit older, 14 months or whatever, and, you know, I was good. I was getting up early, getting stuff done, get my day started, and then when we had him, it's like, "Oh, okay, well, this is just shaking everything else up." Like, my morning, sure, I might be getting up early, but it's not to do what I need to do. It's to take care of him and help out there. And now that he sleeps well, thankfully, now
good.
it's like, okay, well, I just want to kind of sleep till shortly before I need to get him up. So like
Mm,
it's been an interesting, and this is something I've been trying to get back and figure out actually. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. Is like I know my morning routine needs to be improved from what it was before,
mhm.
because how you start your day, in my opinion, is how the rest of your day goes. Kind of like a domino
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
So, and what you're saying is perfect. Like 15 minutes. So, what? How do you suggest people go about implementing a new morning routine who might be rushing around in the morning?
Yeah. I think the first thing to realize is that we all have a morning routine.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
people will say, "Oh, I don't have a morning routine," and I'll say, "Well, tell me what you do in the morning." You know, I get up. You know, I reach for my phone. This is the thing I hear, and I check
Yep.
the news or the
Yep.
social feeds, and I say, "How do you feel?" Terrible. And you know, or I turn on the radio or the TV, and I start shouting at the news. You know, whoever's spouting things that frustrate me. Um, or I sort of, I drink coffee and then I rush out the door. And so we all have habits. That's what a routine is. It's just
Hmm.
behaviors that we do repeatedly and they become habits. And for most of us, those habits become so instinctual we don't recognize them. Some of those are helpful, like most of us brush our teeth morning and evening. That's really good. But we also, maybe the picking up our phone before we're barely conscious is less helpful. And
Yeah.
so it's realizing that you are already using your time. Even if you're rushing, you're using your time. And is there a better way to use your time? Could
Mm.
you either use that time that you spent doom scrolling to do something that's more focused, more intentional, um, or could you maybe just get up even 5 minutes earlier to just start to do it? And so it's saying to people that with that rushing, does that help you? Does that
Mm.
mean that you arrive at the important things of your day, feeling in the right state, the best frame of mind? And mostly people say, no, I feel sort of harassed and rushed. And
Mm.
it's like, well, how would you like to feel? And one of the biggest techniques that we find people have responded to is as well as having a to-do list, most of us have an endless to-do list, a list of jobs that we're going to do each day. But could we also add a to-be list where we think
Mm.
about what qualities do I need to embody to successfully accomplish those jobs? How do I want to feel accomplishing those? If I've got a really difficult negotiation, maybe I want to go in calm and focused, or assertive and clear on my position. Maybe if I'm actually going to meet, a friend for lunch or for drinks after work, maybe I want to just be relaxed and have fun, so that we set our intention of how we want to be, the quality we want to embody, rather than just rushing through work, being harassed, arriving to
Yeah.
see our friend and still being harassed because we've not stopped to think, actually, what will help me get the most out of this? So
Mm.
it's simple techniques like that where we, as you said, we set our intention, because we know the way we start our morning matters. That the
Yeah.
research shows that our morning mood tends to amplify and increase throughout the day. So if we let our day run away with us, we're allowing the day to shape us rather than taking control and shaping the day, which
Yeah.
which means that yes, there will be difficulties and challenges, but maybe we've prepared ourselves. And we at the end of the day, we can look back and go, maybe that was a tough day, but actually I feel that I have a sense of peace of mind because I dealt with it the best I could, rather
Yeah.
than the state that I was in, which was collapsing into bed and thinking, thank goodness that is over. You know, that was a that was a disaster.
Yeah. That's been a big thing too. Like I've noticed, like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I just need to get up a little bit earlier before, I have to get Everett up and all that. But for me, I've been realizing or making the connection that one, yeah, the first thing that I do is one, to check emails and stuff when I wake up
Yeah.
on my phone. But two, the night before, what I'm doing, I think is hindering my ability to get up when I want,
Mm-hmm.
just because I stay up later for whatever reason, work things or maybe house stuff, or just end up doing the doom scroll just to not have to think
Mm-hmm.
about anything, which keeps me up too late. So I think it even starts kind of the day before, the night before, in my case at least, where I need to just be um, more purposeful with my actions before bed. Even putting
Mm-hmm.
my phone away at a certain time so I can kind of get my eyes out of that, so I sleep better. Um, my mind races a lot at night, so like even
Mm-hmm.
maybe keeping a notebook to
Yeah.
write down what's going on in my brain so I can actually rest, actually
Yeah.
sleep better when I have those times. So I think what is your thoughts on that on the night before? Does that play a crucial part or not, or is that just kind of me?
No, I think for me, it certainly does. I think it's interesting. I have a nighttime routine as well.
Mm.
Kate doesn't,
Hmm.
and I think it's because of the different types of people we are. Um, and so for me, and we do address some of this in the book, that some of it is preparing yourself. So setting yourself up the night before to follow through on the commitments you've made to your morning. So for some people, that might be, if you've committed to exercising, it might be just setting out the clothes or the equipment that you need to use. If you're if one of your commitments is to enjoy a sort of a healthy breakfast, but actually
Mhm.
ensuring you've got the ingredients and maybe doing some of the preparation for that
Mm.
the night
Yeah.
before. Um, and so it doesn't have to be a lot. And so with all of the practices, the 30 practices that make up the sort of the SHINE model, because SHINE is an acronym that stands for the 5 elements, and I'll come on to that. But it's about things that you don't need a lot of resource or equipment, but it's helpful to have what you may need. So if you're going to do some sort of reflective practice, and maybe some journaling, just to have
Mm.
the pad, the notebook handy. Maybe you're using it the night before as well, but have it ready. Think about your phone. So often when I'm working with clients one-to-one, and the issue of the phone, we do look at, okay, what can you do? Are you using your phone as an alarm clock?
Mm.
Okay, so the first thing you're going to have to is pick up your phone. So let's look at getting a traditional alarm clock. And one of
Yeah.
the practices is alarm, and using the alarm more intentionally, having an alarm that is not alarming. But if you really need to
Mm.
be woken up and get out of bed, placing your alarm out of arm's reach so that you have to get out of bed. Because if you're someone who repeatedly presses snooze, you're saying, I need to get up at whatever, 6 a.m., and then you're delaying it by 15 minutes. So you could get up at 6 a.m. and use that 15 minutes far more productively. So that's
Yeah.
where, when people rush, and that's probably the people who are rushing, they're delaying
Mhm.
getting up and then rushing. So you
Right.
could use that time. So yes, there is some preparation or some thought perhaps the night before. So it may be that you turn your phone off, or you put that on the other side of your bedroom, so that you can't just automatically reach out and pick it up.
Yeah.
But what we also know with habits, with making or breaking habits, is it's both putting barriers in the way so that
Yeah.
you have those pauses to go, oh, I don't want to pick up my phone. But we also know that it's most effective when you're replacing one habit,
Mm.
an old habit, for
Mhm.
a new one. So you're switching them out. So it's going, if I'm not going to doom scroll, what am I going to do instead? Now, whether that's last thing at night or first thing in the morning, what am I going to do instead? And maybe, as you said, for you, that's reflecting on your day
Mm.
that's gone, or maybe reflecting on the day to come and doing a little list so that you get that out of your head and you don't take it into sleep. So that also you don't wake up having to panic and go, what have I got to do, and trying to remember everything.
Right.
But you can go, actually, I've got that covered, so I can do the practices that help ground me, help give me the focus, help me map out my day in the most productive and helpful way, so that I can really flourish and succeed.
Yeah, I think that's a crucial reminder, is to replace, the one habit with another, so it can kind of, like, I think it's, if you're trying to quit smoking or something, it's just like an oral fixation thing. And so to switch out, they like, we'll give them like candy or sucker or something that they can switch it. So something in the same kind of regards. That's a good reminder, because even if it's your phone, like you're so used to grabbing something, maybe it could be like, maybe you need to do your reading in the morning if you read or journal. So that's a great reminder. And you just mentioned too earlier, the SHINE acronym from the book. I'd love to kind of highlight that. Of course, we want people to, grab the book, read the full book and everything, but kind of highlight over what SHINE is and each of those steps, if you're open to doing that.
Yeah, sure. So SHINE is the innovative approach that Kate and I developed to creating morning routines. And so it's really set up so that each person can really craft an individual routine that works for them. And so SHINE stands for the 5 elements that we feel are really beneficial to bring into our mornings. So the first is silence. So in an increasingly busy and noisy world, just creating some stillness, peace, and reflection really helps us gain the clarity that we need. The next is happiness. So discovering those techniques that bring us a sense of joy, that help us to feel confident and uplifted. So for me, you mentioned this, one of the practices I added in was reading, because I love reading, and I read a lot of sort of business books and development books. I also like fiction, but I realized that my nightstand was about to collapse under the weight of all of the books I was buying, but I wasn't reading them. And so the second practice that I sort of added in was, I really want to read because I love it and I feel really enriched by it. So I'm going to set my alarm 15 minutes earlier and I'm going to read for 15 minutes. Because that gave me a real sense of sort of pleasure, accomplishment, but also it meant that however difficult my day was, I'd started it doing something that was really sort of nourishing and that made me feel happy. And it doesn't have to be reading. It could be, there are all sorts of other practices we suggest. So it's whatever, sparks joy within you. The third is the I of SHINE is intention. So that finding those practices that empower you to shape your day. So really creating your day in the way that is most helpful for you. And then the N is nourishment. And nourishment, we tend to think of nourishment as, what we feed our body, the drinks and the food. But actually, it's about feeding the mind as well. So actually, how do you stimulate? Which might be reading, it might be other practices. So a sense of sort of keeping your brain active, and ideally things that are not directly related to your work, so that you don't start working. So, I might read, I'll read sort of motivational books or business books, but they're not necessarily directly about what I am working on. They're, maybe more general, so that I don't start thinking about my project specifically, because then you move into work and you start your to-do list. So it's also there where we get into, the social media is actually what inputs. It's like, I think of that as a mental diet. So one of the things we really hot on is, what is the mental diet in the morning? If you are feeding yourself sort of doom and horror and sort of scarcity and or just creating that sort of discomfort, disease, or anger, that's really not helpful sort of mental stuff to take into your day with you. So I'm not saying don't engage with that, but what I learned, because I used to just turn on the radio, and then I would find myself shouting at whichever politician was on, having a debate, and of course a one-sided debate. And I then realized, actually, I'm going to engage that, but later in the day. So I engage that later on in the morning, once I've set my intention, so that I don't get hijacked by whatever is the story of the day. So it's the sort of mind, body, soul, feeding the whole person, as it were. And then the final is exercise. And that will mean different things for different people. So, getting the body moving and creating energy for the day ahead,
Yeah.
in whatever way. And so when, that might be a HIIT workout, it might be going for a run, it might be something that's just some simple shaking. A lot of my clients, I work for a hospice and cancer charity. So a lot of people have very, very low energy. They have, serious conditions that may mean that movement is very limited.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, it might be getting up, getting dressed, making their bed
Yeah.
is a form of exercise. And that gives them a real sense of, I've moved my body, but it's also a real achievement. So we're recognizing that it's what works for you. If you want to go and run 5K, brilliant, do it. If you want to just do some stretches, do a bit of yoga, whatever it is, but
Yeah.
just find the way of moving, because we know that motion shifts emotion, so it's just helpful.
Mm.
And within each of those, so there's 30 practices in total, so each of the 5 sections have 6 different practices that we recommend.
Mm. Those are, I mean, and I think those are all really, really good ones, and things like you said really wouldn't take a whole lot of time. I mean, just a bare minimum of all those, uh, you're gonna see a difference. Like,
Yeah.
just knowing where my morning routine was before having a kid, and everything like that, like, knowing what I was doing and just how it positively affected, the rest of my day.
Yes.
Now trying to, still navigating that change and doing that. But yeah, I think that's a really great acronym, uh, and how it fits with Shine, I think it's really cool because if you show up in your mornings better, the rest of your day's gonna be better, and you're gonna be able to shine your light better, throughout the day. So I really do like that one. Um, and yeah, I think, yeah, the nourishment really stuck out to me in that, and I think that's a key one that people might not always think about in that certain way. Uh, the mental diet,
Mhm.
is good to think about because there's so much negativity and, social media comparisons and scarcity and, like, yeah, if you're starting and look, even if you don't think you are, like, you're still being quote unquote poisoned
Yeah.
with that. Like, it's still affecting you, even if you don't think it is subconsciously, which is a crazy thing, which that's just a whole nother topic. But
Mhm.
so having that nourishment be that mental diet, I think is a huge thing with so many people,
Yeah.
could implement and be better off for. Um, so like what with that, like, I guess, what are some things that you usually see from people, clients you work with, um, like direct correlation at all to them getting a better morning routine in their lives? Like, have you seen like any really cool success stories from it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It's hard to tell, but one that springs to mind is, um, so working with someone who works in the legal profession,
Mhm.
and a close family member um, had a experience of cancer and was really
Mm,
seriously ill, and it was during lockdowns,
mm,
and that really affected, as you can imagine, them in terms of their sleep,
yeah.
in terms of how their days were, in terms of work, um, and suggesting some simple practices. One of which was a simple breathing technique to
Mm,
begin the day with, um, and the transformation in just a few weeks, from rather than waking up and just being beset by all the worries and thinking what horrors, and going straight into survival mode,
yeah.
thinking, because actually saying to them, you're waking up anyway, and what are you doing? You're lying there worrying. So
Mhm,
could we use that time a little bit more productively? Maybe the worries are there, but could you do this in the presence of the worries and just see the difference? And so
mm,
doing a simple, breathing technique. And this has grown into a sort of a half an hour morning routine for this person, but saying in a few weeks how that had helped them sleep better,
mm,
how it had helped them throughout the whole day, and they couldn't quite believe the difference it had made, just making these simple changes to the morning, and saying, and then days are still difficult, but when the challenges come up, I feel more resourced. I feel that I can cope better with them. And that was really profound. And I think that some of it is saying there is a lot in this situation you cannot control. And for most of us, that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, if you focus on something that you can control, which is what you choose to do when you first wake up, you're starting your day feeling in a position of power.
Yeah.
And that in itself can be transformational. It's like, oh, the life is not happening to me.
Yep.
I am actually doing something. And, I can sort of shape my breath and
Yeah.
do some other things. And then that unlocked, just those simple changes unlocked a whole host of other sort of positive benefits for this
That's
person.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so really good, really,
Yeah.
really amazing. And there
It's
are
so
lots, yeah.
it's so like crazy how like when we can show up in our mornings and take control, and instead of just reacting, like always be on the reaction side of things by getting up and rushing and checking the phone immediately, and it's just all reaction. When if we can take control and be in charge, then like you said, it gives the power, which puts you in a better mental position, physical position going forward.
Yeah. And our whole society is now encouraging us to react. Social media has
Mm-hmm.
react buttons, has the other emoticons. It's all about reaction.
Yeah, yeah.
And we know that actually that we can't control the stuff that happens to us. And the one thing we can control is how we respond to it.
Yep.
And if we allow ourselves to just react, we're just allowing sort of ourselves to be conditioned animals rather than cognizant human beings who can make a choice. And so that's why using that time before we've thrown ourselves into the day, and I'm a bit like you're in a chariot and the horses have just run away and they're just going to race throughout the day.
Yeah.
And you spend most of the day if you're trying to grab the reins. Whereas if you can take the reins and get into the chariot and actually find a comfortable seat, then you've got a far better chance of actually going in the direction you want to, in the speed you want to, and arriving there safely.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is that's the control that we have.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's just a good visual, of being able to control the reins of life by how you get up and take action in the morning. So, you know, um, Toby, super grateful for you being on and sharing all these tips and your SHINE acronym and everything else. We really appreciate that. Before we kind of wrap things up, where can people find your book, connect with you, and find out more about what you do?
So the book will be available from the 5th of January in North America. So it's available in all the rest of the world. It's also published in Italian and in Polish and in Romanian. So that's the other language. Yeah.
Nice.
So
That's
and
awesome.
hopefully others to come. But yeah, so really excited about North America, but available from wherever sells books. So Amazon,
Cool.
Barnes and Noble, all of the booksellers you know and love, and independent bookstores as well, of course.
Cool. And are you on social media at all? Or can people connect with you personally there or no?
Yes, I'm on social media. So as Toby Oliver Therapist on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter. So yeah, really happy to connect with people.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, everyone, make sure you get connected with Toby. Check out that book, the beginning of January when it releases here in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., and go grab it now. So, Toby, again, thank you so much for your time and being on Elevate Your Brand today.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was really a pleasure to talk with you today. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you know somebody who maybe is trying to improve their life, or maybe they're just stressed, or maybe they got big goals, or maybe it's you. Um, if it's someone else, share it with them. Let them hear this message from Toby and learn from him and help improve their lives, because together we can reach a lot more people by doing that. So if not, take action in what you learned today, put it to use so you can elevate your life, your brand, your position, and you can make a difference in the world. But until next time, we'll talk